my name is Sophia and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So today I am so excited to be back with School Spirits episode reviews and breakdowns. So we are back. Season 3 of School Spirits has begun. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I had so much fun watching these first 3 episodes. Well, I say fun, but it was also kind of emotional torture. I will insert a picture here of me after finishing all the episodes. I cried multiple times. Took me an hour after that before I could go to bed because I was so emotionally distraught, but it's all good. I'm very much enjoying the season so far. I mean, obviously we're still, in the beginning of it, but so far I love it. But obviously I can't talk about all 3 episodes in this one video because that would literally be like 3 hours long. So I am going to be making a video for each episode, and I'm going to try to get out these videos as quickly as I can before the next episode comes out on Wednesday. So without further ado, let's talk about season 3 episode 1, It's a Wonderful Afterlife, which, by the way, I love that title, and I just love how they're continuing the whole theme of, naming the episodes after other movies and stuff. So first, I'm going to be talking about the plot. So I'm going to be doing how I usually did it like last season, which is I kind of go by character because I just feel like that makes it a little bit easier since there's a lot happening. So obviously first we're going to start out with our girl Maddie, of course. First I just wanted to say I really thought the way the episode started with like showing the flashing red lights in the school and then showing this almost like dream-like sequence of like Maddie falling, and then it like cuts right into her like in her body on the stretcher in the ambulance. Like I thought that was really cool, and I really liked the song they used at that part. So yeah, I thought like the whole intro to the season was really like cool and like a clever like artistic way to start it rather than just being like, oh yeah, we're back at the hospital, like, because I was very excited to see how they were gonna like start the whole thing. So obviously a scene that was so like crazy to watch was like when she ran out of the sheriff's car and like ran into the school and was like calling out the ghosts' names. Obviously I did get a little panicked for a second when she couldn't see them in the library, but I was completely forgetting the fact that she probably would only be able to see them in rooms that people died. So obviously quickly that panic subsided once she was in the theater and then she could see Wally. But I just think it's like really like sweet, but obviously also heartbreaking, like how you could tell like when Maddie got out of the hospital, like literally the first thing she just wanted to know was like if she could still see them. And you could like really feel her like panic like in trying to find that out, and that's why obviously she kind of like did this crazy thing of like leaping out of the sheriff's car. And then obviously it was so like sad to see her like at home looking very just sad to be away from all the ghosts, and like I mean it's just so crazy for her, like she hasn't even been in her own house in like a month. And we're seeing her just she got out of the shower, she's just like looking in her mirror and literally sleeping in her bed for the first time once again in like a month. And yeah, but you can just like really see how much she hates being away from all of them, and it was so it just like crushed me. Something I thought was interesting was when her mom brought out the dollhouse from her dad, because like if you watched my breakdown about the trailer, that was something we saw in the trailer, was this clip of like this dollhouse being like burned. So now we know that is what the dollhouse is. Like it's a dollhouse that Maddie's dad got for her when she was a kid, but obviously we still don't know what the heck, like why it's being burned later, or if that's like a dream or something. But I don't know, I just find it interesting that we're seeing it. And then, oh, I also thought it was, like, so sweet, but, like, so sad when she was, like, saying to her mom, like, she feels like she understands, like, what she went through when Maddie's dad passed away, like, a little bit better. And, like, we all know she's saying that because of, like, Wally, and it's just, like, And, okay, so obviously we see this, you know, someone took a video of her when she was talking to Wally, and obviously to them it looks like she's talking to no one, and she looks really crazy. So obviously we're seeing, just like I predicted, like, there's a lot of hard times of her having to get used to, like, being back, and, like, people's weird reactions to her being back and everything. I'm just interested to see, like, how much more it's even gonna escalate in the future. And obviously at the end of this episode, we saw that she seems to be having, like, a dream of, you know, walking down the hall in her house, and then she, like, opens the door and it's, like, the boiler room, like, her scar in the school. So obviously, you know, I think we're just seeing that she's just, like, having a really hard time adjusting to being back, and she's still really missing that part of her life, and, you know, still just kind of wrapping her head around that. And like I talked about in my last video, Peyton List, who plays Maddie, did hint at there being, like, a running theme of Maddie having these weird dreams and stuff. So obviously we're still not quite sure if that's just completely, like, dreams, nothing really to it, it's just her struggling to accept what's happening, or if maybe there's going to be something a little bit deeper about these dreams. Like, maybe some of these dreams actually are going to be kind of caused by supernatural things, and, you know, like, we don't know. But, and then I just wrote one last just little funny note, like, it's just so weird seeing her with the living people, like, seeing her interact with Xavier again, and Claire and Nicole, like, it's just really strange. And yeah, and seeing her not with the ghosts, like, at all times is just, it's really weird. It's weird for us to get used to as viewers, I feel like, just as much as it's hard for her to get used to. So now I'm going to talk about Mr. Wally Clark over here. So obviously, thank God he didn't cross over. I mean, we knew pretty much that he wasn't going to. But, you know, still interesting to see him once again, like, looking at it and, like, knowing that he literally could if he wanted to. But I do think it's interesting that he still hasn't told anyone about that, and I wonder, like, when that's gonna come up. Oh my god, when Maddie and Wally ran up to each other in the theater and they, like, couldn't hug, that was the saddest thing ever. And then also it killed me when there was, like, one point when Maddie was, like, walking in the halls with, like, Claire and Nicole, and she, like, walked right past Wally, and she, like, couldn't see him, and he's like, Maddie. Oh my god, that literally crushed me. And then, of course, the big thing, I feel like, with Wally this episode was Maddie and Wally's little makeshift, like, date on the field, which is just such a sweet scene. Like, that was probably one of my favorite scenes of this episode. But obviously, once again, it's, like, beautiful but also heartbreaking at the same time. It's just such an interesting dynamic, you know, like, this relationship that's literally between two, like, worlds, and obviously I just don't really know, like, what they're gonna do with this relationship, like, going forward, especially since obviously we know that at some point Wally's gonna have to cross over, like, eventually, which I don't even want to think about that right now, but, you know, it is gonna happen eventually. So obviously there will at some point be a time where Maddie has to completely lose him, and I just gave myself the ick. I don't want to think about that. So moving on. So now I'm going to talk about Simon, who obviously I feel like this episode is, like, the most based around. I thought it was interesting that we see when he's trying to leave the scar with Janet, he, like, cuts his hand on one of the, what do you call those, like, the test tubes in the lab, and obviously he gets, like, a really big cut on his hand. And so then that's why he has the bandage on his hand, because I remember, like, I talked about in my, like, season 3 theories video and my trailer video, we kept seeing photos and stuff from set of, like, him having a bandage on his hand, and we didn't know, like, why, but so now we know. It's nothing really that crazy, it's just that he cut his hand, but it is kind of interesting though, because it did kind of give us like, I mean, we kind of knew already, but like it gave us like kind of 100% confirmation that he like is alive, because Janet said like ghosts don't bleed, and he was obviously bleeding a lot. So yeah. And then we see like Charlie says that like he checked, like no ghost was missing, so we obviously also know that it was not a body swap, which I mean, we also kind of knew, but, you know, just getting those things out of the way, like, we know it's not those things. Kind of like I was saying with Maddie, like, weird seeing her with the living people. Now it's also weird seeing Simon with the ghosts. Like, obviously, you know, he has been helping Maddie, like, this whole time and, like, hearing about these people, but he hasn't actually met them, and now actually seeing him with them is, like, so weird. But I thought it was interesting, just as I've kind of predicted, you know, that Simon and Wally were gonna have a little bit of tension. Simon did say, like, it seems like I'm here because she didn't want to leave you, to Wally, and Wally's kind of like, damn. But I do like, obviously, that we see as the time progresses, like, they are starting to get on a better foot with each other, but, you know, there's still a little bit of friction. And we see something interesting, which is that, because Simon has a theory that if he tries to leave, then maybe he will be able to leave because he's not dead like them, like, so he doesn't have a place to go to where he died. But unfortunately it doesn't work, and he still does actually end up, like, in the boiler room where he got stuck. But we see that for him it's, like, really painful when that happens. Like, he's like holding his ribs, and he's saying, like, he feels like he got hit by a freight train, and Janet says, like, oh, like, for us it's never, like, hurt that badly. So once again confirming that he's living, you know, so these supernatural things affect him more. I also just liked when, like, he kept saying, like, we're using the term alive, like, about his dad, because they would keep being like, so as we know your body, he's like, I'm alive. We can just say I'm alive. I just thought that was funny when he kept saying that. And I also thought it was funny when Maddie sees him, like, at school the next day, and she's like, oh my god, are you back? And he's like, I'm still invisible to everyone but you, but what's new? I just thought that was, like, a funny line, even though obviously it's also kind of sad. But I thought it was interesting when, at the end, when he's, like, in the scar with Mr. Martin, and then it, like, starts to snow. Obviously we get more into that in the next episodes, like the whole snow thing, but it still is, like, weird. Like, we don't really know why it just, like, started snowing, like, at that point. I don't know if it was just because Mr. Martin was, like, talking about the fact that there was some other thing happening, and then that kind of just, like, made the scar, like, start to, like, physically show it. Okay, so now talking about Xavier, something that's interesting is he's talking to his dad, the sheriff, in the hospital, and the sheriff is like, what the heck was happening last night? But he says that he, like, saw all the red flashing lights in the school, which we know was, like, caused by the veil being so thin and everything. So that's very interesting, because obviously we know that means, like, living people could see, you know, what was happening. We hear him say, like, I'm not ready to start chasing ghosts yet. So, you know, he's not completely on board yet, but we might be making some progress. And then obviously we keep seeing throughout the episode, like, you know, he keeps seeing this guy in the hospital who's, like, staring at him, and it's kind of creepy. And as soon as we saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, that guy's a ghost. And I did recognize that it is, like, one of the new people that, like, was announced in the like, news articles about season 3, but there wasn't any signs of him in the trailer. Like, at the end, you know, he meets him, and his name is Kyle, and, you know, he basically tells Xavier that he is a ghost, and yeah, Xavier seems to be the only one that can see him in this hospital. And then, this is just, like, a funny thing, but another funny moment that I liked in this episode was when him and Nicole were trying to distract the, like, person at the desk at the school so that they could get Simon's suspension letter. And they were like, we want to start a club, but they, like, didn't know what to say, and they were like, we're starting the grave rubbing club. And then Xavier's just like, yeah, like, he does this, like, face whenever, like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and then he, like, just looks at the person, and I just thought it was really funny. So now Janet. So obviously Janet had a very interesting role in this episode. First of all, she was saying how she was theorizing that instead of just, like, thinning the veil so much when they were all in their scars that they could, like, break a boundary and, like, get out or something, she feels like they actually opened a whole new passageway that was able to let Simon, who was a living person, in. And then, you know, she also kind of says how she feels like Mr. Martin's watch is like the skeleton key that just kind of lets them get into any scar because it was the first one, which, you know, was kind of what we were kind of theorizing at the end of season 2. But then, you know, the weirdest thing in this episode is that all of a sudden she's like talking to Simon and she's like, so I just feel like maybe it didn't let you leave when we all went into our scars again because, like, my door had opened and maybe, like, I was supposed to go through it and maybe that's, like, what's keeping you from leaving. Which, when she said that, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of just like, what? Like, I didn't really know what that would have to do with, like, Simon being able to leave, but I don't know. But then she just did it and she just crossed over. And I was just honestly really confused by that and, like, not expecting that at all. Especially because I feel like, you know, like, they went through this whole thing of the end of season 2, her being like, no, like, I'm not gonna go through my door yet. Like, I feel like I have more to find out from Mr. Martin and, like, you know. But then she just, like, not that long into episode 1, just, like, crosses over. And it's kind of like, so what was the point of that? So that was, like, one of the only things in this episode that I was a little like, I don't know how I feel about that. Because now I'm also just like, now she's just gone. And, like, she was, like, the most, obviously, like, smart person there and, like, could figure out all this stuff. And, like, now they don't have her. So, I don't know. I just thought that was a little weird. And I also just don't get, like, why they had to, like, get rid of her so fast. I mean, I don't know if it just has something to do with, like, the actual actress, like, not being able to do the whole season or something. Or, you know, some people have been theorizing that there actually is, like, a deeper meaning to it, and, like, you know, maybe they had to do that for a certain reason for the plot. Like, I don't know what it would be. Or, like, maybe, because we still don't really know, you know, what these exit doors do. Like, maybe she's not fully gone and we are gonna see her again at some point or something, but I don't know. But we see that when she left them all, like, a note, she wrote for Yuri, like, I told you I would teach you how to keep things from resetting. The secret is in the scars. So obviously, we don't know quite what that means yet because Yuri hasn't gone into his scar. I am very curious to see what that answer might be and, like, what, if that will have any, like, significance. Because obviously I feel like it will, considering, like, they're bringing it up again and, you know, they're, like, making us wait to see what it is. But, yeah, I mean, once again, the only thing I can think with that is, like, maybe you have to, like, bring an object into your scar, and then because it gets so, like, engulfed in the trauma, like, it makes it stay, like, almost like how, you know, when they bring so much trauma from being in the scars, like, it kind of thins the veil. I don't know, that's my only, like, prediction, but I guess we'll see. Now I'm just gonna talk briefly about Charlie and Yuri. So, you know, I just thought it was cute when Charlie's saying, like, you know, I didn't really necessarily want my boyfriend to see, like, my scar and, like, my deepest, darkest thoughts. And then Yuri's like, you're what? And Charlie's like, what? I didn't say anything. And he's like, no, I think you said something. Like, their little banter, and I just thought that was really cute. And then I also liked the line when Charlie's saying, like, so you don't secretly hate me after seeing that, and then Yuri says, definitely not as much as you do. I just thought that was, like, a cute and sweet line. And then I just also thought it was funny in the scene during the assembly, and the ghosts are watching, and Charlie says, like, wow, like, the superintendent is fabulous. Like, I haven't seen a suit that tailored well to someone since Erica Kane in All My Children. And Rhonda's like, what? And like they just like have that little funny moment. I just love when they do stuff like that where they like really show how these ghosts have like these decade like differences in like when they grew up and stuff. And now, as the last like person I'm going to talk about is the superintendent, Dr. Hunter Price, played by Jennifer Tilly. So obviously we know that, you know, we feel like she's going to have a big role this season and is going to be hiding a lot of secrets and stuff. I also just first wanted to say, like, relating to that, like when she's having this assembly, I thought it was really cool how like first we see, you know, the principal just trying to get their attention, and he's like tapping the microphone, he's like, attention everyone, like, you know, and it really reminded me of like the very first episode of the whole show, literally the very first moment in the show when there's like an assembly and they're talking about Maddie's disappearance and everything. And like the same thing happens with like the principal like tapping the microphone and being like, attention everyone, attention. Like, so I just thought that was cool because it was kind of like a full circle moment now that like Maddie's back in the school and everything. But, you know, I just have to say, obviously this moment is very scary, very freaky, and I think it's interesting when she says like, you know, after the latest in a string of security breaches and high risk events, like, you know, we're making these decisions with the school. Like, I just find that interesting because I know, like, obviously a lot of crazy stuff has happened recently, but like, I don't know, I'm just wondering like what exactly they are completely referencing with like all these string of security breaches, like, because that almost makes me think that they know about like the other times Simon and stuff has like gone into the school late at night like talking to Maddie and stuff. And then obviously we find out that she wants to close the school, and she's saying like this senior class will probably be the last class to walk these halls, and then she wants to build a new school across town. So obviously that is very interesting, and you know, it puts a lot of this plot of this season into like drive, because obviously that means like, you know, I feel like a lot of the season is going to be like them trying to stop that from happening, you know, so that, because, you know, we don't know what would happen to the spirits at this school or like all the other dark forces that seem to be, you know, surrounding, like they need to figure that out. They can't just let this school be like gone and like never solve all of that. And obviously we also meet Livia, who is another new character played by Erica Swayze, and you know, she is Dr. Hunter Price's daughter. Yeah, she just is like a queen bee, mean girl, very preppy, and you know, we just get our first little taste in this episode of, you know, we know not great things are going to be happening with her. And then I just have two little like random things to say about this episode. I thought it was interesting when Charlie like was saying how he like checked all the rooms and like he accounted for all the ghosts still being there. And he says like, oh yeah, and I ran into Elliot, Fern, and Sarah. And like we kind of realized that like he's talking about those three random ghosts that we always like would see like in the circle and stuff, like with Mr. Martin, like in the first season. But like we never like knew their names and they never like talked or anything, and you know, like a lot of people kind of just would always like joke about that. Now we actually have names for them. So I just thought that was like funny that they finally like actually like acknowledged their existence. And then I just also thought another funny moment in this episode was when those like annoying girls were like saying bad stuff about Maddie like at the assembly, and then Claire turns around and just completely like roasts them. I just thought that was a great moment, and you know, that's just like one of my favorite things about Claire is how she can just put people in their place. So now I'm just gonna give my little like review of the episode and like what I thought about it overall. So I would give this episode a 9 out of 10. I mean, it's pretty hard for me to ever like give these episodes like low rating because I just like love everything about this show. But I just didn't give it like a 10 out of 10 because I don't know, it just like wasn't like one of my favorite episodes like of all time of the show, especially because I feel like just a lot of it was kind of just like getting back into the flow of things. But you know, I still thought it was a great episode. But yeah, like I said, I just thought like there were just some things that were kind of confusing, like the whole Janet thing just kind of threw me off. And then yeah, like I said, like the high risk events, and like it's still just confusing thinking about what the people at the school like know about what happened that night and like why they haven't like questioned them more about like why they were there and stuff. And then I just said the highlights of the episode were seeing the new dynamics, like Maddie with the living people and Simon with the ghosts. Like I just thought that was really cool to see, and obviously that was like one of the things I was most looking forward to going into this season. And then I also said the introduction of Dr. Hunter Price, because, you know, I just feel like she's a cool, interesting new character, and I obviously think she's going to be, like, involved a lot. I said the scene of Maddie and Wally's date, which, once again, was so cute, but also heartbreaking. And then finally I said kind of the introduction of Kyle, because I just also think he's an interesting new character, and I just thought it was cool the way they're starting to implement him into it too. So now for the final part of the video, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite like editing and like cinematography moments of this episode. This is going to be the final thing. Usually I also talk about like theories and stuff and like, or like what's to come on the next episode, but obviously I'm not going to do that this time because we still have 2 more episodes that I'm going to talk about. So at the end of the 3rd one, I'll talk about theories, and then obviously also at the end of that one, I will talk about any clues we have to the next episode. Like I said, I really liked the whole intro and like showing these shots of Maddie kind of like falling into this like black void. I just thought that was very cool. Oh, I liked this scene. It's like very subtle, but basically when Xavier's like talking to Maddie again in the hospital and she's like, "You saw my dad?" And he's like, "Yeah, like after, you know, Janet hit me with the truck and everything, you know, I flatlined, whatever." And then he's like, he like looks and he's like, and the camera kind of like zooms in on him a little bit and he's like, "Where did he go?" Like talking about Maddie's dad. But then it like, the camera kind of like pulls back again, and then his dad comes in and like grabs him and starts talking to him. I just thought it was like really cool the way that was shot, with like him being like, "Where's Maddie's dad?" And then it's like his dad just like comes in and like interrupts. I don't know, I just thought that was like a cool little way that was shot. And then I also liked seeing like when Simon's like in the library, he's like, you know, just frustrated with being in this ghost world, and like he's seeing these 2 people talk about like Pokemon cards, and he just like rips it up, but obviously like it doesn't actually do anything, like they still have it. But I just thought that was like a cool shot of him like coming in between them, ripping it up and walking, but then like they still have it. And then finally, I really liked this shot where once again Simon's just looking very like distraught from like, you know, seeing everyone like leave the school and he can't and everything, and like he's in Mrs. Fields' classroom. He sits in Maddie's seat and we see like this shot of him, and it's very also reminiscent of the first episode of the whole show once again, because there's like the scene at the very end, like the very iconic scene where he goes into Miss Fields' classroom and he's like crying, and then like he sits in Maddie's seat, and that's like when I Know the End by Phoebe Bridgers is playing, and then, you know, it's like all leading up to him seeing Maddie and everything. So I don't know, I just thought that was like really cool. Like it was kind of once again like a little like full circle moment. So that is it for my little breakdown and thoughts about season 3 episode 1. I hope you enjoyed. Of course, like usual, leave all your thoughts and opinions about this episode in the comments. I would love to read them. And I will see you in my next video about episode 2 and then eventually episode 3 before episode 4 comes out. So, bye!